Okay, I hope you can all hear me now. Seems to be okay at this end now. I don't know why, but whenever I do a scheduled event, it always messes me up. And I always got to cancel it and then just do a fresh one. So the reason why I do the events is just to let people know. But I don't know, it doesn't seem to work very well. Cheers. Okay, so there's a couple of things we want to do tonight. We have the giveaway draw, and obviously, and we have the reveal of the blend. Well, it was the London Fog with a slight variation that we put into the press a couple of weeks back. So we'll see what the result is. This was the press that I was gifted by Josh Piperump. He's since then made another one and showed his one. So the first thing I want to do is to show you the list, the updated list. And if you've done a VR or left a message, just let me know if you're not on this list. Hi John. So we have Chris Kearns, Beowulf 95, Sean Vaughan, Talas Piper, Pipe and Tobacco, The Magician Piper, Harriet Herfer, Pipeful, Nicholas Saris, Aces GR, Northeast Pipe Smoker, Pipes and Spirits, Andrew Sirigliano, Big V Piper, Beardless Gnome Joe, Birdseye Briar, Cobbett of the Shire, Happy Birthday Stephen, Briar Blade, Wolf Valley Boy, Chow Sandro, Pipe Grump, Happy Go Lucky Piper, Yardism, Marco Narek. Okay, so those are the ones that did a VR, and the ones who left messages are Paul the Scandinavian, Steve, Peter Rames, and Sandro Fazzolari. So that gives us a total of, I see we've got a little problem here with the numbering, so I'll have to just reset that because I did this in Excel, but I was adding to the names and I didn't update this bit. So bear with me while I do that, so everybody gets the right opportunities. So I'm gonna get rid of the gap so that I can change the numbering. Okay, that's done. We'll reprint that page. It's extremely important to me that everything is done as clearly and transparently as possible. Otherwise I'd be something of a hypocrite. So there we have it. We've got Marco Narek, which is the latest. I did put a limit on, I did say that I would close the date for entries for Thursday. However, Marco is somebody that I would value his VR, so I just decided it's all in a bit of fun. We don't have to be too rigid about it in terms of allowing entries. So I've pretty much taken it up to the present moment. So Marco Narek is the last VR, and hey Chad. So there we are. So those are the numbers. So as I mentioned in my previous video, I've taken a leaf out of a Pipe and Tobacco's book and done 3 entries for each VR and 1 entry for each comment. So the vast majority of these are VRs, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So there's 23 VRs and 4 comments. So we'll get to the drawing a little bit later. I did want to just talk about one thing. Some of you will have seen my posts on IG about the we'll do that in a second, Sandra. We'll do that shortly. About my filters. Now, this particular one, it has dried out somewhat, so it's not as dark as it was, but it was virtually black, and it's like the carbon had leached out into the outer jacket of the filter, and I was a little bit concerned about this, so I posted, and people said that the vast majority of people said that it's not right, there's something wrong there, and they thought it was a fake filter possibly. So this is from the same batch, and these were, I must say, it's been in the bin, so a lot of it will have fallen out, but this was pretty jam-packed with carbon granules, and overall I have to say that I'm pretty impressed, because I thought these things were just really pretty sort of summarily put together, and I'd probably find a few little granules in there, but this thing was chock-a-block, so there's certainly a decent amount of filtration going on from the carbon. And when I opened this one, it's exactly the same, and some people said that perhaps the white end is plastic, in which case it would be fake, but these are not. These are ceramic, and I bought them from GQ Tobaccos, so they're not going to be fakes if I bought them from a reputable company. So I don't know, I'm going to watch this space. Obviously when we take out the pressing, we're going to try some of that tobacco, so we'll see what happens. I mean, it's very possible that I'm what people call a wet smoker. I wasn't aware of it, but maybe I am, I don't know. I've certainly noticed sometimes that, I mean, it could be this is a dodgy batch for some reason, I don't know why, what would make it a dodgy batch, but perhaps it is. I have noticed in the past some of the filters, if you look very closely, and I don't know if you can see it, but you can see the perforations. You see that? Yeah, it's definitely fresh. I think so anyway. It's happened more than once, maybe not to that extent, but it has happened. You see those little perforations, the little holes? I have had where you literally get little spikes coming through, and I don't know what those spikes are, whether it's moisture, but I don't know, maybe I'm just really sort of chugging away too heavily, I don't know. So I'm going to keep an eye on that, but it was worrying me a little bit. So I think to start with, I'm going to take out the tobacco press so that I can load a pipe while we're talking. And I've not, in anticipation, I've not had a pipe yet, so I wanted to have as clean as possible a palette to see if there's any difference after the pressing. Aces, hi! Okay, so here's the beast, it really is. This is a big old clamp. Once again, everybody, this is the handiwork of Josh Piperum. Did an awesome job. Very, very much appreciated there, Josh. Thank you very much once again. So I'm going to start. I have already loosened it over the past week or so, which was the direction that I was given by Glyn Quelch of GQ Tobaccos, formerly of GQ Tobaccos. And he said that there was the vast majority of people. I think it's been there about 2 weeks, Sandra. The vast majority of people, when they press tobacco, they increase the compression every day or two. So as you compress it, and the tobacco brick compresses, it allows you to turn, you know, every day or two you can just keep giving it another twist and another twist. But in actual fact, Glyn Quelch from previously of GQ Tobaccos, he told me to do the opposite way. He said tighten it as much as you can on the first day, and then every couple of days loosen it a bit. And to be honest, I think it's not that I've got any real experience in the matter, but I think he's right, because for two reasons. Number one, these clamps are really heavy duty, and you tighten it as much as you can, you crank it and crank it. That's as tight as you need to go. And if you keep tightening it, what you're going to do is just squeeze the life out of the tobacco. And he told me what you'll end up with is a brick of so heavily compressed tobacco that, number one, all the juices will have gone out of it. And I remember when the Dagners did one a couple of years back, I remember they had to have it in a bucket because it was dripping so much tobacco. It was dripping so much tobacco juice, I should say. So I don't know how that tobacco turned out for them, but it certainly seems to make sense what Glenn was saying. So I did it in the opposite direction. I did it as tight as I possibly could, and then loosened it off. So the bottom just comes straight off, and what you have is a really compressed square brick, which is really pushed into the side, so really giving it a square shape. So inside the clamp you've got the top bit which is doing the compressing, and we'll have to push this out with quite a bit of force, because don't forget the compression is going from top to bottom and laterally as well. So there we have a nice looking brick or cake of tobacco. Okay, let's get this press out of the way. Once again, Josh, fantastic job. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to using it regularly. So let's get this open. Nice bit of coloration there. Hi Harriet. You see a little bit of the oils there on the top. So it's pretty tight, but it's not too tight, let's put it that way. It's got a nice form, a little bit lopsided there, but a pretty nice form. This is the result of roughly 300 grams, I think it was, something like that. In terms of the aroma, it's got quite a grassy aroma actually, which is this has got in it Orley Golden Sliced and Virginia Woods, as we know, with a little bit of Amphora Virginia in there for sweetness. That's the variation to my normal London fog. I have to say it's got quite a distinct, quite a rich aroma, richer than I'm used to when I take a whiff of London fog. Let me just grab a jar of London fog. Well, the aromas coming off the brick are now dissipating a little bit, so I'm going to break a bit off. Hi Marco, thank you for your VR. Despite it missing the deadline, I decided that deadlines are there to be broken, so I've added you into the list. What this does do, first of all, it's ready to go. It's pretty dry. There's a drop of moisture in there, which is ideal. But what it does do is it turns it into, see in there, it's more of a broken flake. In here, it's more almost like flakes, like little, like a shag cut. and there's not much rubbing out to do. It really crumbles up really nicely. So it's quite brittle in that respect. And so I was worried because when I for instance, Seattle Pipe Club, the cakes that they have for plum pudding, I generally found them quite difficult to manage. They were really pressed together, and if you cut them, you cut a slice off. It just, for me, I found them awkward. And because also the Seattle Pipe Club ones, they were 4 ounces usually. So, well, the Special Reserve ones were 4 ounces. So they were quite thick, so you couldn't really just break a corner off, whereas this one is thin enough to just break a corner off, and then it just literally disintegrates very nicely. So we're going to try that in, of course, the Nerup, the London Fog pipe, which is dedicated to that. It's not had anything else in it, ever, I don't think. So we're using a Dr. Pearl Jr. Vaughan from GQ Tobaccos. This is the same one as this one, which came out so black. So we'll see what happens. So I've rubbed out about probably half a bowl's worth. So we'll smoke that and then look at the filter. My main curiosity here is to see if there's any change in the flavour as a result of the pressing. What I find interesting as well is that when you have tobacco houses like McBaron, when they talk about pressing their tobaccos, you know, you might think that they'd have them in the presses for like a year at a time or something, which gives it some serious aging. They have it in the press for sometimes 12 hours, that's it, a day. Sometimes 12. I was watching videos of McBaron, how they're processing, how they go through their processes, and they have it purely to create the form, to create the square, the cake. And that initial one that I did last time, if you remember, I did one with a tobacco tin using there's a video, should be a video on there on the channel. If you recall, I did a quick pressing of was it Virginia Woods? No. Where is that thing? It was Asquith GQ Tobaccos. So this one I did, and this one was just 50 grams worth, and it's kept its form. It looks, you know, it's maybe not as compressed, but it's done a good job. And the main purpose for, in my limited knowledge, to press a tobacco is just to help the tobaccos to marry, for the flavors to, if you're doing a blend and you've got more than one tobacco type, it obviously puts them in closer proximity to each other, very close proximity, intimate proximity in fact, and that should in principle lead to a better marrying process. So let's give it a try. Sandra, is it 12 days? Have you had a look at my last video and worked out the days? Because I haven't. Tamper by Paul Turnock. I don't know if you guys remember him. He hasn't posted a video for a long time. Cheers, Sandra. Well, obviously I have to smoke this down a little bit, but on the first few draws, not as much nuttiness as I have on the usual blend of almond fog. Hi Neo Stuff from Cyprus, thank you for joining. Yes, Pipe Puffer UK. I guess you would call it a crumble cake. That's an apt description. Possibly what this has done is just mellow it out a little bit. So I may not be getting... On the initial opening of the paper, I did get quite a richer aroma. It was richer than what I get out of the jar. Yes, I don't see why not. That's pretty much what we've done here. But for it to be a real flake, and this is a crumble cake, for it to be a real flake you'd really need to start with the tobacco leaves, which you would layer and press and then slice. I've already taken this from flakes, so for instance the Orlick Golden Slice is a flake. I think I'm right in that. I don't know if a flake has to be taken from the original leaf or not, but you can probably buy the raw materials. You can probably buy a tobacco leaf, but if I'm honest, I would say it's probably more hassle than it's worth, and probably best left to the tobacco growers who know what they're doing. In terms of, I mean, for instance, if you wanted to just grow tobacco in your backyard in a plant pot, there's no way of telling what kind of flavors you're going to get, you know, unless you're going to start becoming botanical and treating the soil and getting into all of that stuff which these guys have been doing for generations. Yes, Old Lang Syne, that is certainly something which is worth doing. I didn't do it on this occasion. Glyn Quelch did say, hi Raylan, thanks for joining. He did recommend just using a water gun and just generally adding a mist or a bit of steam or a little mist of water, just to help it meld together and marry well. But it doesn't seem to have had any problem. Well, I've got to say, on the initial few minutes, I'm not seeing an improvement. If anything, there's a slight degradation in flavour. You could mist with whiskey or brandy, yeah, sure. They certainly, Glyn Quelch told me that he used to do that for different blends. There is a tobacco from Germain's which has an infusion of cognac. Can't remember which one it is now, but Chad, yeah, you might be right. I suppose that would really have to be done under careful conditions, not to introduce mold. That's a good point. Pembroke, yeah, thanks, Snake. Okay. Not sure what to do with this. I'll have to break it, which I don't really want to. I don't know how to store it. It's too big to get into a jar. What I might do is just leave it in this and put it into one of my Tupperdoors. What, smoky and smoky, Tim? Double smoke. Yeah, I've seen that video. It is a great video. Well, a bit of sweetness is now starting to come through. It's really starting to pick up now, the flavours. Well, 300 grams. Yeah, you're probably right. Shri, how you doing, Chris? At the moment, the pipes are back in their box. I haven't started using them yet. I probably will do in the next day or two. Just goes to show about jumping the gun. Flavors are really, that sweetness is coming through now. It's really, it's interesting how it takes a bit of time, because this all came from the same block of tobacco. But it seems obviously certain juices need to start flowing, temperatures need to kind of align themselves in order to allow the flavors to come through, and that seems to be happening. There's a nice little bit of a toasty flavor coming through. There's the sweetness coming through. There's a bit of a nuttiness. I'm trying to detect if there's a difference as a result of the Virginia from Amphora. Well, I still think that it has sort of narrowed the flavour profile compared to it straight out of the jar, but I'm still undecided whether that's a refinement of the blend or if it's a constraining result of the blend and it narrowing the profile. Well, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but it's telling me that the chat has been disconnected. Please wait while we try to connect you. If you can hear me, please say hi. It's the first time this has happened. Oh, you can hear me. Good. Okay, I'm glad. Hey Eric. Hey John. Okay, there's a load of messages which are coming up on my phone now, but I'm not on my main screen. I'm just going to refresh. I can see that my network has gone down, but my phone seems to still be transmitting, which is good. I'm glad that it's not disconnected. That's weird. because unless I'm using my data, mobile data. Okay, my screen's back on. Thank you, thanks for hanging in there, people. I remember watching one of Match's videos maybe a month or two ago. And he was getting a bit cheesed off with the live videos because they kept on giving him stupid messages like this, where the chats weren't coming through. Whereas the visual and the vocal was okay, the audio was okay, but he couldn't see any messages from people. Alright, so, hey Steve, how you doing? Thanks for joining. Right, I think we can get going with the draw, which is what you're all waiting for, let's be honest. Not just to hear my dulcet tones. So first and foremost, do a little recap on the prizes. So in my last video I forgot to measure the cigars, so here they are. So we have a mixture of Cubans and non-Cubans. So we have one of my favourite non-Cubans, which is the Sun-Grown by Drew Estate. It's the Undercrown Sun-Grown. Lovely spicy little number. We have a Cuban Romeo and Julieta Mille Fleur, very nice smoke. We have my probably number one New World cigar, which is the Oliva Sirivi Bellicoso. And finally, probably one of my favorite Cuban cigars, which is the Habana H. Upmann Connoisseur number one. Yum yum. So that's the cigars. Now the pipe-related prizes. And I think this is the star of the show, really, is the kit, one of the new kits from GQ Tobaccos, chocolate and vanilla. And this is it's got something for everybody on this, because it's an aromatic. It's an English E kind of. It's got some latakia in there as well. It's kind of in the same vein as Bob's chocolate, but I think it's better, in my personal opinion. So there's a bag of that, unopened, it's still sealed. We have a pipe of early day pipe tobacco, which is an English blend, I believe. We have some Carey's custom blend private stock, Old English, ready rubbed. A tin of Devil's Holiday. A tin of Peter Stockaby Golden Dawn. I saw a tin of this somewhere on somebody's, I think it was on Pipe Stud. It's about $30–40. A bag of half and half, sealed. GQ Swamp Flower, which I blended on 18, also one of these kits, on the 18th of June. So it's had about a month and a half now in this jar. I won't send the jar, but I'll send the contents. And of course, some London Fog. I couldn't do a prize without some London Fog. And including a tamper as well, which was given to me when I bought a pipe from what's he called now? Chris Shaw. BJV pipes, Baba J Vegas. So, and then this I got from Danny Shaw. It's a three-way leather pipe stand. So that's going in as well. And last but not least, the Amadeus pipe. A new, old stock but unsmoked. lovely shape. It's like a scoop-shaped Rhodesian. Very, very nice. It's got on it written Chicago 2008. So that makes me think possibly it was made for the Chicago Pipe Show. There's a little bit of a fill there, and there's a couple of dings here and there due to its age, but unsmoked. Yeah. So those are the prizes. Can somebody please confirm that you can hear me? Just one of you will do. Cheers, Tim. I did mention in one of my videos previously that I might put one of the new mugs in that I got from Alt. But I decided that this package is pretty comprehensive and I'll keep that for another event of some kind. Thank you, Mike. How are you doing? Okay, so I'm just going to get the number cruncher on the screen. So here's the number cruncher. I'm just going to go through the entrance once again. These are the video entries, the VR responses, the video responses. Chris Kearns, B.O. Wolf 95, Sean Vaughan, Callas Piper, Pipe and Tobacco, Magician Piper, Harriet Herfer, Pipeful, Nicholas Saris, Aces GR, Northeast Pipe Smoker, Pipes and Spirits, Andrew Sirigliano, Biggie B Piper, Beardless Gnome Joe, Bird's Eye Brian, Cobbett of the Shire, Briarblade, Wolf Valley Boy, Pipe Grump, Happy Go Lucky Piper, Yardism, Marco Narek, and the commenters are Paul the Scandinavian, of course. How could you have comments without Paul in there? A pretty serial viewer. We have Steve, and we have Peter James and Sandro Fazzolari. If any of you feel that you should be in there and you're not in there, now is the time, or forever hold your peace. So the numbering, as I mentioned before, I took this cue from Pipes and Tobacco, is for a VR you get 3 entries, and for a comment you get 1 entry. So the numbers go through from 1 to 73. So here we go. So we need a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 73. Okay, people, here we go. On your marks, get set, randomize. 64. You see this at the same time as me. 64. Yardism. Chad, very well done. Enjoy whoever is fortunate enough to win, Chad. Perhaps you're a bit of a prophecy going on there. I think it was your generosity of spirit, I think, possibly, which eased your way in. Congratulations, Chad. Very well done. Thank you, everybody, for taking part. It's a good response. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for taking part. Yeah, so we'll see how we go till the next time. And thank you, Chad, for the very kind comments in your VR. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Harriet. I'm sorry I couldn't bring my archery skills to bear for this one. The nearest I'd get probably is being bow-legged, possibly. Although I don't think I'm even that, so. Corny. I have to be honest, although I'm enjoying it, I think it was better loose in the jar rather than in the plug form. Although it's early days, obviously, it may well mature and become fantastic, but possibly in 6 months' time, I don't know. There's certainly got every opportunity to marry in terms of flavours in that brick. So we'll keep revisiting, we'll keep breaking off a chunk every so often, and we'll see what happens. Yes, Andrew, that was a really special meet-up I had with Izzy. Been in touch with him so often beforehand. Obviously we have a lot in common in terms of our belief structures, but I'd never, before the YTPC, I'd never met him before. So obviously having a lot in common, it made sort of the chats, and we had a certain understanding, but certainly we'd never met each other, we didn't know each other personally. And also the fact that he'd grown up in London also made a difference. So he was very familiar with my community, familiar with my surroundings. So there's a lot to talk about. So the chat was very natural. And like I said in my video, it was like meeting a long lost friend. It really, because there were so many similarities and common ground that we could talk about. It was just great. It was a really enjoyable experience. We agreed to meet up on Geula, which is, as I mentioned in the video, a very busy thoroughfare in the Orthodox area of Jerusalem. And I was very worried at the time, because as you know, if you watch the video, I went with my father to celebrate my new grandson. And my father is an elderly gentleman, not too steady on his feet, and so essentially I couldn't really leave him. So we were bound together, we were velcroed together, if you like, for the whole weekend, except for that evening, which he said he was going to have a rest and I would go out. But when I got back, he wasn't too happy, let's put it that way, and I felt very guilty at the time. So that was the only real cloud, if you like, in the silver lining. The rest of it was silver lining. I had a fantastic time with Izzy. I was waiting for him on the street on Geula, and I was sort of standing on the sidewalk expecting him to drive past, and I was just going to jump into his car. But he'd parked around the corner, I didn't realise, and he suddenly shouts, "Simon, Simon!" from across the street. And I turn around and I see him crossing with his arms open, and we instantly sort of embraced, and we just walked to his car. We were obviously like two little kids, very excited to meet each other. And a few seconds later, that was the first part of the clip where you see me saying hi to Izzy. It was literally seconds after we met, and it was great. So we drove around a bit. We were going to go to a park next to the Knesset, and by his ways took him to a different park. Anyway, we ended up in the Knesset, as you saw. We found a spot to sit on a rock, literally, and we had a chat, and before we knew it, it was almost 2 hours gone by. and I had to get back to my dad. I hope next time I go there I'll have more time. Perhaps go and visit his family. That would be cool. And there is a very thriving... yeah, absolutely, Sandra. He certainly had a diverse career history, or career path. He belongs to the Lubavitch sect of Orthodox Jewry, and I don't know if you guys have heard of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe, who was the grand rabbi of that particular sect. And one of the central planks of the ethos, if you like. Hey Josh. The giveaway was won by Chad, Yardism. One of the central planks of the Lubavitch ethos is to embrace people of the faith who perhaps have become estranged for one reason or another. And they're an extremely, extremely warm and embracing group of people, more so than pretty much any of the other Hasidic sects in the Jewish religion. I've done photography for quite a number of their weddings, and the warmth that I don't think I actually put it on my video. In the duty free, I didn't buy any tobacco. I bought some cigarettes for my son, but I didn't buy myself any tobacco. But I did buy myself some vodka. I'm not a particularly heavy drinker of any kind of alcohol. I enjoy a bit of whiskey here and there, a bit of beer, a bit of cider, and vodka quite rarely, in fact. But it was Grey Goose that I bought, which is a very, very nice vodka. A flavoured one I bought a pear flavoured one, and it's absolutely divine. Well, the point I wanted to make was that the first time I tasted Grey Goose vodka was at a Lubavitch wedding, and the host, it's quite rare when you're working at a wedding, because at the end of the day you're hired help, and you don't really, number one, you don't always have time to have any kind of social experience, although I do work harder to become part of the celebration, because I find it gives me better pictures at the end of the day. But you don't often, a lot of times the hosts themselves are very, very busy, and they don't have time to interact with you other than when you're taking photos of them. But this guy, during the wedding, during the dinner, in the evening, he came up to me with a bottle of vodka and he said, please join me for a l'chaim, join me for a drink. And I did, and I absolutely loved it. So that's what the point I was trying to make was the warmth and generosity of spirit that the Lubavitch sect have. I was fortunate enough to go to one of their schools for a couple of years, but they kind of changed the school into a college, so I had to find schooling elsewhere. But they're very generous people, very, very, very warm and embracing. And Izzy is a perfect proponent of that. He really does. He encompasses their ethos. I'm trying to remember if we talked about any other stuff which I didn't put on the video. think I pretty much put it all on there. Yeah, he certainly is. There's no airs and graces, no complications, just a good bloke. Salt of the earth, as they say. Alright, so let's have a look at this filter. I'm not terribly keen on breaking it down, I'm just going to see how warm it is. It's not too bad. Yeah, it's tight. No, I don't think it's a good idea. But I'm going to set it down, let it cool, then take the tobacco out so it'll help speed up the cooling. Chad, so I noticed you didn't answer my question, even though it was a bit tongue-in-cheek. Hey Paul. How could you miss it, Chad? It's on the video. Unless somebody's put it down as spam. Spam as yeah. I'm just going to your channel. See if it's on there. Q&A call out. I know you made 2 vids, but I say you didn't do my question. London calling. No politics, right? Well, this next question might be okay then. Without stating my own preference, out of the billions of people living in the USA, how come the only 2 front runners in the last election you guys could come up with were Trump and Grump? I mean Hillary Clinton. That was my question. I don't know if it's a fair thing to say to call her Trump and Grump. It's how should the press put her across anyway? Hey George. You did address it? Okay, I'll have to watch it again. I must be honest, I listened vaguely to both of them to see if you'd answered mine, and what I heard didn't seem to be, so I didn't listen through. I was being a bit lazy, but I'll listen again. Which one was it, 1 or 2? How was it, George? Yes, Mike, indeed. Nice looking take there, and I've smoked one corner of it. Yeah, it looks really good. The initial smoke wasn't as great as I was expecting. It seemed to be a thinner flavour profile compared to the usual one out of the jar. But I think it probably just needs time, so we'll see. We'll keep dipping in and seeing how it is. Mike, I've just remembered, I don't think I've sent you that second installment. Whenever I see your name anywhere, I keep remembering, so I'll get that sorted. Apologies. Nicole, I don't know where that comes from. Paul, I can understand, but Nicole? There's got to be a rhyme or reason about it. Fair enough. I guess it must be the Aussie in you. Thinking of Nicole Kidman, maybe. I've got to give that Sutliff a little bit more of a go. I must be honest with you. Based on the couple of smokes that I've had, and it's obviously very early days for me, but the feeling that I have is that in order to get to the flavour of 5100, it feels perhaps that they perhaps added some flavours in order to get it to 5100. 5100, I don't know if it has flavourings in it or not, or some sweetness. I'm sure it'll have some kind of sugar-based or sweetener-based addition in there. I think most of the McLarens and the Virginias do, but it's the quality of the McLaren tobacco and the particular strain of Virginia and how they process it, which is what gets you 5100 and Virginia Woods and the Christmas Cheers and the 40th anniversary. It's all different variations of their process, but the bottom line is superb quality leaf, which is the main reason why they stopped, is because they couldn't get that leaf anymore. The Sutliff, one wonders how Sutliff are able to make that blend. Presumably, if that leaf was available, then the McNeils would have gone and got some. So my feeling is that possibly, again, I need to spend some more time with it, but my feeling is that possibly there's some flavourings in there in order to bring it to that kind of flavour. And what I kind of supported that for me was the fact that halfway through the bowl, it lost quite a lot of the flavour, and which made me think that it wasn't intrinsic in the leaf, but rather quite a bit of additions to get that flavour there. I don't know if that all makes any sense to you guys, but that's where I was, my initial sort of feelings on the blend. But when I first smoked it, I thought it was excellent. I thought the flavours were great. There we go. Perhaps we'll give it a little smoke again now. I think we'll be able to break down the we'll break down the Bulldog in a minute. Jack, what is that, a book? With pipe and book? Old guides mix. What is that, a tobacco or a book? This is also very wet. I'll have to give it some air time. What's that, Mike? You came to the same conclusion about flavourings on that blend? Cheers, Chad. Thanks for joining, and congrats again. Couldn't go to a better home. Alright, we've loosened off a little bit here, so let's have a look. Well, that's not even half a bowl, so that side is still dry. This is soaking wet on the side, and it's starting to blacken over there. Now that's, I think, on the walls of the shank. I don't think that's leached out. I don't know, maybe it's just the way I smoke. It's a lot of moisture there, a lot of moisture. And also it's Virginia, so possibly there's a lot more moisture in the tobacco there than we realise. I imagine if I would have smoked through the full bowl, it would have got a lot darker. But this, it is still very, very moist after a quarter of a bowl, perhaps. Look at that, got a blackening there. Yeah, George, if you have a look back. Oh, right, okay, fine. Cheers, Mike. George, if you look back on my impressions video on for Virginia, I said exactly the same thing. If I remember correctly, it was that my recommendation was only to fill half bowls when you smoke it, because I found that the second half wasn't very good. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And I've pretty much found the same with this Sutliff 515. Yeah, that's snakes. That's a conclusion that I'm coming to. I'm not quite there yet. It's certainly very moist. I agree with you on that. And possibly it's had some stuff added to it. And that being the case, if that is the case, that it's got a lot of additions, then strictly speaking, this would really be an aromatic. Capstan Blue, in my experience, is not similar. I found it to be a more, but it's been a long time since I smoked it, so don't quote me on it. But I found it to be a little bit more similar, perhaps, to Full Virginia Flake. I find Samuel Gawith's Full Virginia Flake to be quite a subtle smoke. It's not an in-your-face blend, even though it's called Full Virginia Flake. But I find it to be quite subtle and quite pure when it comes to Virginia flavours. Quite a thin flavour profile, and I think I found Capstan Blue to be quite similar. Any of you guys have a similar experience? Supposed to be going to bed early tonight. I promised myself that I was going to go to a car boot sale tomorrow. Hay pipes, etc. Yeah, it is very moist. It is very moist, but I'm thinking it's moist for different reasons. I think it's all the additives that are creating that moisture, whereas in Full Virginia Flake, it's the moisture of the leaf. Tree, I don't know what your your best bet is really to get a second-hand smartphone from eBay or something like that and do your videos with that. But again, as I say, I don't know what your financial situation is, but that's would be the way to go. The tablets are never going to give you a good experience when it comes to video making anyway, because the cameras, the refresh rates, the mics, all of them are not going to be as good as on a phone. Certainly not the older ones, perhaps the more modern ones will. Certainly the later iPads would be fine, but you're probably better off with a second-hand smartphone, a reasonably recent smartphone, and you'll find that your videos are far superior to what an older iPad would do for you, in my humble opinion. I tell you what, Tree, I've got an old iPhone. I'm going to see if it still works. If I can get it to work, I'm going to send it to you. It's an old iPhone 4, and it's with the old larger thing on the bottom, but if it works, it should be fine. It should do you nicely. It hasn't been fired up for a long time. If it works, it's yours. I'm putting the charger in as we speak. Let's see what happens, eh? What you got to do is get yourself a little stand for it, and you're off and ready to go. It's drying off okay. Tree, have you ever been to the Ruislip car boot sale? That's a very good point, Joe. A very good point. It's a frustration that I've had for a long time. I find that a lot of pipes, the vast majority, in fact, of them are of very poor fit. Yeah, they do rattle around in there, and you make an excellent point. I never thought of that. I never thought of that at all. So it would be interesting to see if that happens differently in different pipes. A very good point. And what I should do is one of the tips that I put on my channel a while back was somebody pointed it out to me. A very good idea. That what he would do is he would keep shop receipts in his pocket and just tear a bit off and wrap it around. There you go, Joe, yeah, exactly that. And you would just do that. It doesn't even have to be as wide as that, as long as it's sealed at some point. So let's just try that out. So if we take that one out again, so you can see there's a lot of movement there. I'm just going to hold this still. There's quite a lot of movement there. So I'm going to wrap this one up. The only thing is it's a bit of a chore when you're out, especially, to remember to have this little bit of tissue on you, or I suppose put some in my wallet each day. The new bride is fantastic. She's in France at the moment with her husband's family on vacation, and she is off to Israel as well to live for a few months to start their wedded bliss, and they're off in a few days' time, which is very exciting for them. Alright, so that's that. That one is really sealed in there now. It does make the draw quite a bit tighter, I must say. I'm embarrassed to say, George, that I don't know the name of the town. They're in the mountains somewhere probably in the south of France. But she's with her in-laws and their family, so I'm sure they're having a great time. I spoke to her actually earlier this evening. She seemed happy, and that's all that matters. I've ordered a pound of this stuff, and I'm possibly going to regret it. So you might see that in future giveaways. Ping indeed. I'm not sure, Chris. They do sometimes get a bit stuck in there. I assume there is some expansion going on, or it could just be the moisture which is making me adhere to the sides. I tell you, when you first spoke it, it definitely has that 5100 flavour about it. Possibly even closer to Virginia Woods. It's got that sweetness in there. Possibly it's a little bit over sweetened, I don't know, but we'll see. I used to be into stargazing. I used to have a whole kit. I used to have an ETX, a Meade ETX telescope. Oh, we're going back some time now. That brings back some good memories of freezing my nuts off in the garden in the wee hours of the morning. I ended up buying myself a what was the name of that telescope? Quite an expensive make. And they were just regular telescopes, quite small, compact telescopes. Some of them are quite expensive. I've forgotten the name. If you're into astrophotography or generally astronomy, you'll probably know the make. But I did try my hand at I'm smoking Sutliff 515. Oh, why can't I remember the name of that telescope? Anyway, they're very beautifully made telescopes, precision instruments. Anyway, I managed to get some. When I had the Meade ETX, I bought some attachments so that you could attach a camera to the viewfinder. And in London it's very hard to get clear nights, as you might expect. So most of the time I got the best results when I went on vacation in the countryside. But I remember, I think the highlight of my astrophotography was getting a reasonable shot of Jupiter. Saturn, the first time I saw Saturn, blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind, seeing those rings around the planet. It just blew me away. I mean, you saw pictures of it, you know, you can see pictures in any science textbook or anywhere, but to see it in your glass in front of you was just a different experience. Yeah, absolutely. Hi, Michelle. Welcome. How are you? Shavua Tov. When I first saw Saturn, I was absolutely hooked. I was quite fanatical about it for about a year or two. Well, it's mind-blowing and mind-numbing at the same time. And then moving on to Jupiter, and then to start recognizing different sort of things in the night sky. And obviously I followed some of the literature and some of the information online about what was going to be where at any given time. I remember the first time I saw the Pleiades, which is a cluster of stars. Also blew my mind. That is a thing of beauty. That is an absolute thing of beauty. And then when you see it at high magnification and you actually see that there's thousands of stars there, but in terms of the ones that I could see, I remember on a particularly clear night, I counted something like 50 or something stars, when in reality, when you look through binoculars, for instance, which is what I do nowadays, I don't have a telescope anymore, but you can see loads with the binoculars as well. You see about 6 or 7 or 8 stars on a good night in the Pleiades. Another highlight for me was the belt of Orion, seeing the nebulae, which is right in the middle. I don't know how familiar you guys are with constellations, but in Orion you've got the central 3 stars, and then if you drop down from the belt of Orion, you've got its dagger, and in the middle of that dagger there's a nebulae. And seeing that for the first time and realizing what it was, even though it's just a fuzzy cloud, but realizing that it's a nebulae. And then you see the images of that particular nebulae from Hubble's images. It's pretty mind-blowing. So when I first got to see Jupiter, and then I started to get a little bit familiar with it, then I started to actually recognize the moons of Jupiter. And they're just little pinpricks in terms of the size, but you get to realize what they are. It's just, it's mind-blowing, it's phenomenal. But as with most things, that kind of went by the wayside as the family grew and time constraints set in. And you know, as you go through various cycles in life, different interests, and currently it's Tabaciana. Over my adult life I seem to have gone through a cycle of interests. It's always good to have a distraction of some kind or other. I'm not sure that smoking is the best one, but there we are. Thank you very much, Michelle. It is Michelle, right, rather than Michael. Looking at the way you've spelt it. And what does the MKE stand for? I'm assuming you're not a member of Knesset. Oh, right, okay. Milwaukee. There's a great Hasidic rabbi in Milwaukee. Shooting stars, you often do get them in the same place. They appear to be in the same place at the same time of year. So around this kind of time there is a regular shower of meteorites, which is what shooting stars are mostly. And they're called meteor showers. Yes, Rabbi Tversky. And they are also, if you can catch them, you see when you look at pictures and videos online of meteor showers, they're always sped up, so they look dramatic and they look amazing. But in reality, you've literally, in the time of when you're gonna, the astronomy magazines will tell you roughly when they're going to be, and the time and the night, the date. You have to be lying on your back, and sort of, you can't concentrate on any one given area when you're looking up at the sky. And it's almost, you see them out of this, it's kind of peripheral vision that you get to see them. You kind of have to let your eyes drift a little bit, and so that you can sort of take in the whole of the sky as much as is visible to you at the time. Because if you focus on one given place, you suddenly see something out of the corner of your eye and you've missed it. And it literally just zips across the sky for a split second. And it's essentially a grain of a meteorite, which is the size of a grain of sand, flying through the atmosphere and burning up on entry. That's basically what it is. Another one of the highlights, which I used to enjoy sort of counting and watching, is you can see satellites, and they zipped across the sky at a fair rate, really zipping across from one end of the sky to the other in a matter of seconds. Well, maybe a minute. And you can see the space station. You can see that as well. It's a speck of light, but you could see, based on the speed that it's going, that's what it was. And the size of the light as well. I never could actually get it in my telescope. It was only in the binoculars, because they're going too fast to track in a telescope. The make of telescope, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it had the word view in it somewhere. Teleview. I think it was called Teleview. Yeah, Teleview. I had one of the Teleview telescopes. The gold dot is more likely to be Jupiter. Mars at the moment would look red. Would look quite a deep red or a deep orange. At the moment, Mars, I think, I haven't looked up tonight or in the last week or so, but certainly in the last couple of weeks, Mars was quite close and was quite prominently red. the brightest planet that I've seen is Venus. That's a really bright white light and quite large, not necessarily because of its size but because of its proximity. But this is all going back from memory. I mean, I stopped that hobby probably 10-15 years ago, but it was fascinating. It's funny how hobbies which are not that common, when you meet somebody who has a similar interest, it becomes something fascinating. It's the same with the pipe. When you meet somebody who has an interest in it, you suddenly got so much in common to talk about. So when I was doing astronomy as a hobby, there was a guy here in just up the road, and we discovered each other as having an interest, and from that time on we always had something to chat about. Good news is the tree starting up. I'm not sure I would use it as a phone because it's going to be pretty slow. It's an old iteration of the iPhone, but I'll test it. I'll do videos and see if it's workable. Hey James. This is the crucial bit. It's trying to activate it. We'll see if it works. Well, I'll put my ID in. See what happens. I'm not sure if I remember the password of this one. I might have to reset it. It's been a while since I've used this one. Well, it's not happy with that so far. Sorry, excuse me, I'm just trying to see if I can get it working. Cheers Sandra, thanks for joining. Right, does anybody know how to fully reset a phone? I think you have to hold the power button and then the home button, is it? iPhone 4. Alright, it's asking me to plug it into iTunes. Alright, let's see what happens. Alright people, I'm not going to bore you while I try and set this phone up. I'm going to wish you all a fantastic weekend. If you're enjoying your vacations, enjoy the rest of it. I've got a week left before my diary starts to get busy. Might go away for a couple of days. In fact, we're aiming to during the course of this week. No, there's no reset buttons. Yeah, I'll have to look online and see what the actual resetting is. But thanks everybody. Thanks George. Thanks Sean, Pipes etc. George, Sandro, Pipe Tree, James, Pipes etc. George, I might have said you already. Martin Williams, Tim, Michelle. Thank you for joining. Force restart. How do you do that? George, I'm a complete novice, so don't take too much notice of somebody who's not really been into it for a good 10 years or so. And I didn't know much back then either, to be honest with you. But I did enjoy it. It was good fun. Pleasure treat. I hope I can get it working. I'll be in touch with you. Cheers everybody.